Hello, everybody. It is the Clean Breakthrough podcast powered by Greenville Transition. I am one of your hosts, Cole Cowan, a licensed professional counselor in Greenville, South Carolina. I got my two comrades with me today. Boys, we got David McNeese hot on the mic. David, go. Say something. There he is, dude. David McNeese. And then we got Mr. Lucas Coleman. Sosha, come on down. Very, very nice, boys. Very good. All right, how was that intro? Is that pretty good? That good?
That was pretty good.
Okay, that juice.
We'll rock and roll with that one.
Bringing that juice. Okay, David, you got a topic for us today?
I do have
a discussion points. Yeah, I'll let you read it to us, please, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so this topic was brought to us from a family member, a mom that listens to the podcast. And she said she was listening to another video and that Lucas mentioned something in the holiday podcast about that one family member who's going to want to bring their beer to a gathering or other substance. So here is another topic I would love to hear you all discuss. And she says, how can you manage frustrations or anger toward family members who don't show the same support for someone in recovery as they would for someone with another condition? For example, if you had a family gathering and you had someone who had a peanut allergy, I guarantee every family member would be careful not to bring something with that ingredient and not even question it. If it is someone in recovery, I feel it can become a "that's not my problem" mentality.
And I'll note, this isn't just from any listener. This is from our number one listener.
This is true.
Perhaps our only listener.
Number one fan.
But we really appreciate the question. It's a great question. Really good question. All right, so let's pull this thing apart. So she's basically asking, how do you manage anger and resentment?
Yes.
At people not being respectful of people's more or less allergies to alcohol or substances and not bringing those around, correct?
Correct. And first we could just talk about that issue first if we wanted to, and then go into managing the anger and frustration around it, or we can dive right into the anger and frustration.
Let's talk around the issue at first, perhaps.
Okay.
How about maybe for both of you guys, could y'all share some of your early experiences when you realized people were intentionally not bringing alcohol around you or substances around you? And do you recall having that experience ever? The reason I ask is I have a good friend who's several years sober, over 5 years sober. But that was something that we were pretty intentional about in our friend group at first, was not having alcohol around. And then we had some really good conversations about it. And he's like, it kind of makes me feel a little weird. I want y'all just to treat me like normal. I'm good. And I'll let you know if I'm not, you know what I mean? But that was after a year or so sober. And that was just, I think really more of a product of having multiple good conversations. What was it like for both of you when people started being more intentional about not bringing substances around? Or did you even notice that?
I don't remember that being an issue in the beginning. I mean, obviously when it's not family, there's only so much you can control. But I don't remember my family really bringing it up for the first 9 months, a year. And I would say maybe after close to a year of sobriety, I can remember one of my sisters saying something to me about it, being like, hey, would it bother you if I had wine, if I brought wine to this thing, or if, maybe we were even out on a trip or something and they all wanted to go to a vineyard. And they were like, would it bother you if we all went to that vineyard? And I was like, no, by all means, do your thing. But that's not going to bother me at all. But I am appreciative that they asked.
Yeah. How about you, Lucas?
I want to say first and foremost that I really like the question. I think it's really specific, but it's super relatable to anybody in recovery to do with alcohol. Obviously, if you were just drugs, you probably don't have to ask your family to not bring the heroin or to do the crack in front of you at Christmas. But I think alcohol is that one thing that is so pernicious and so accessible and approved of societally, that people just always have that kind of stuff with them, and it's a part of a lot of holidays. For me, I think I got sober in March of 2015, so Thanksgiving and Christmas that year were around the like 7 and 9 month mark, and or 8 and 9 month mark, and I don't remember it even coming up. My family just held it down. They said, we're not going to have any alcohol. They came to where I was in sober living for Thanksgiving. And then I think that I went to where they were, back to my parents' house in Charleston for Christmas. And it was just non-existent. I don't remember having a conversation about it. I don't remember talking about it. It just wasn't there. If they had asked me, I probably would have felt like I was putting people out to be like put on the spot. I'm trying to think of like a similar question that you would ask somebody and they would just always say like, oh no, it's not a big deal. Where it's one of those that I feel like there's certain things you don't even ask because you know that it's going to make the person feel awkward to say yes. And it's like, if you feel some way about it, just do it. Don't ask them. It's kind of my feeling on it. Because yeah, I think a lot of people feel uncomfortable being like, yes, I would like everyone to change their normal Christmas and Thanksgiving traditions to not have alcohol. And if you could announce at the beginning that it's because of me and my recovery, that'd be really nice too, just so that everybody is resentful and doesn't like me and feels like I'm putting them out. Like people just don't want to do that. So I feel like the best thing for a family, I would always say, is just do it yourself. Don't ask them for the first one. And the next one, I think you could always revisit and talk about it, which I think my family did similar to David's and told everyone it was fine.
So are you saying that like for that first, like the first holidays, just kind of take care of everything behind the scenes?
Yeah, I feel like don't even ask.
Because it's just going to like bring up more insecurity and like feeling self-conscious. And I'm like, what is already like pretty high levels of shame early on in recovery. So it's like my recovery, my addiction has caused all this like heartache and like trust breaching and money and yet another thing I've ruined for everybody. Like people can't even get in their eggnog at Christmas.
Yeah, and recovery, I just think it's fragile at that point, because I do think beyond that point, as a person in recovery, you need to get comfortable advocating for your recovery and asking, telling people if something makes you uncomfortable, asking like, hey, could we not have drinking here? Or could it be dialed down, or whatever the thing may be, knowing that you might not get your way or that someone might not agree with you or want to do that. But I think getting comfortable advocating for that. But I think in the beginning, it's really tough. So I think if there's a gift you could give somebody in that first year, is to just not have alcohol, not ask them, not wait for them to ask you, and just make it happen. I feel like it's an easy thing to do to support them.
Yeah. And I would concur just from like my own personal experiences with one of my friends who was struggling. It was a thing we just did within our friend group. They were hanging out and stuff, like there just wasn't any beer, wasn't anything. For probably the first like year and a half, I would say. And then it was more of a discussion. He was like, it's okay if you guys do. And everything was fine at that point. But it just need to be open. So
yeah, feels like a no-brainer to me.
I guess like shifting it a little bit to the question, which I think is so good, like the anger and resentment side of it, like I think that's like a really interesting part of it. And I can also speak from a personal standpoint to this because like I have a child that has both a peanut and an egg allergy. And I also have, I've had 2 family members who have gone through chemo. Both my dad and brother had to go through chemo and like had like lower, like, immune systems and like things going on. So like I can speak a little bit just like from a personal standpoint of like wanting people to take care of that. Like don't bring around peanuts and eggs or whatever, or like talking that out and how awkward that can be. And also just from like, a chemo standpoint, like realizing people are like, when you're on chemo, you're much more likely to get sick or not be able to fight it off, and like taking care around that. So I can speak a little bit about that as we go through it too, just from my experience as a family member with that. So where you guys want to kind of start with this angle of like the anger and resentment that can come up?
I think with the anger and resentment, I mean, that's all me stuff. If I'm the person with the anger and resentment, either as the person in recovery that people aren't respecting something that I've asked for, or if I'm a family member, trying to kind of gather up support for another family member that's struggling. So I feel like that anger, resentment really starts and ends with me. I know that I don't like to hear that. I know that most people don't like to hear that that's like a me issue and not a them issue.
Mhm.
But me just figuring out how to accept my surroundings. I think that if I was that family member, it's probably me taking on a little bit too much ownership from my loved one's alcoholism, because I feel like when I'm angry and resentful, it's normally because I'm fearful. And what would I be afraid of? That if these people don't comply with this no alcohol request, it's somehow going to trigger my other family member, and then they're going to drink, relapse, and all their recovery will be for nothing, and it'll kind of come back on me. You know,
Mhm.
that I couldn't convince this one person to not do it, or it'll be on that person that they brought it. And that's where I think the timing matters a lot, because if it's if they're 2 months sober, I kind of would blame it on them. You know, I kind of would be like, that's really messed up. But if it's 9 months sober, 12 months sober, 3 years sober, whatever, I feel like, hey man, you got tools. Like, yeah, that person could have brought the beer. You could have been really triggered by it, and you could have gone to talk to your sponsor outside. You could have gone and found meetings ahead of time, or found one on the spot. Um, you could have an escape plan and be able to get out of there. You know, you should just have options other than like, I saw someone drinking, I'm triggered, and then I go drink about it. I think there should be more there as far as tools in the tool belt at 9 months, a year, 3 years sober.
Yeah. I see like the onus of responsibility kind of shifting, like whereas it's early on, you know, you are probably going to take more ownership of the family member to try to like help create environments where they're not going to be triggered, and also having contingency plans in place. And so, for example, for this, like to the peanut allergy analogy, like with that, like it was like having like an EpiPen, educating our kid on like, hey, you can't eat peanuts. Hey, what is in that? Especially when she was really little, because we realized this when she was like pretty young. I want to say around a year old that she had this. So it was like, hey, what's in that snack? Let me see the candy, and then educating our older daughter on it too. Like, don't like give her candy. The peanut and the peanut butter in the house is on the top shelf of the pantry, like where people couldn't get to it, because it wasn't a situation in which like she couldn't be around peanuts, like even in the house. But there is like precautions that are put in place. Same thing with like if we had like Halloween candy or candy in the house, it was never like, you know, Reese's or anything to have peanuts in it. So we took a lot of like ownership or responsibility early on. And then as she has gotten older, and we put plans in place, we understand like how to use the EpiPen. We've educated her on like, hey, look out for this candy. You can't have this. You can't have this. We tried like different medicines that have actually like helped with her peanut allergy. That it's like shifted. So now it's a thing where she knows, even at 6 years old, like, hey, Dad, can I have this? And she'll come ask. You know what I mean? And like everybody in our friend group and our family is aware of it. But they're also, it's like, hey, like not, you can't have every single thing. But if your 6-year-old can learn that, you know, somebody who's older can learn that as well. But the big like devious mechanism here is like my 6-year-old with a peanut allergy does not secretly want to like choke on peanuts. You know what I mean? Like like there's not a part of her brain that's like, yes, you know what, you should have the peanuts, and like self-destruct here. So there is that part of it too when we're talking about substance abuse, that there is a devious nature within that of like, you know, I know I'm allergic to this, and wouldn't that be pretty sick? They have it. You know, so there is like a little bit of a difference there in those two examples, you know.
It's not forbidden fruit.
Not forbidden fruit, dude. And you know what also is crazy with Campbell, like once she actually can have peanuts now, and homegirl doesn't even like peanuts. She didn't even like peanut butter. It's the saddest thing in the world. I'm like, do you like a Reese's? I've like given her Reese's. She's like, man, it's fine. I'm like, it's fine.
Maybe she was just traumatized.
Well, see, there's the thing, right? She is like, she's always like a little bit like, I don't know if I can have this. I'm like, Campbell, you can have this. Like we've done like tests, and like you take a certain medicine that helps with this. Like you can have this, you know, and you can tell there's still like some trepidation and fear there, you know, which I would rather that happen than having to stab with an EpiPen and rush her to the hospital. So you kind of have to pick and choose there on some level.
Which I think it would be the same if you took that drink after being sober for a period of time, and you're like God, I know the guilt, the shame, everything that's like you've been told for the past however many months you've been sober. I think that first drink would be a pretty shitty drink, a nasty one.
Well, it's never going to get back to that. You're never going to get back to that first high,
Yeah.
right? That your mind thinks you're going to get to. It's like, it's been ruined now
Yeah.
forever. And that's a good thing. Like, that's actually not a bad thing, I would say. Like, that's going to save you a lot of like time, headache, and money, you know? But,
here's the thing for me that I think it comes down to these two things when it comes to alcoholism. Do you view it as like a peanut allergy where like if you have it, you will be really sick? Because this goes back to your point, Cole. We were talking about like that some people don't even believe in allergies and that they're like, oh, that wasn't a thing when I was a kid, where all this peanut like it's just made up, I guess, in their mind. So is it a peanut allergy or is it a diet? And I think some people treat it like it's a diet choice, that it's just like, oh no, I'm vegetarian because I prefer vegetables. And people were like, well, you know, tough. Like I'm not working my event and my food and all this stuff around you just because you have a preference. Versus like, no, I will become seriously injured, hurt, whatever. And I think for a lot of people, alcoholism, drug addiction kind of gets labeled as like a preference of, hey, you just can't handle alcohol and drugs, and that's like a you problem. And so I'm not working all my stuff around it, rather than an allergy or a sickness problem.
Yeah. And so it's starting to get down to like more like core issues of like trust issues with people. Like, who can you trust and who can trust your story and what you have going on? Because then you start talking about like assigning blame, right? Well, it's just the fact that the peanuts aren't washed well. It's just because you let your kid get vaccinated. It's just because you couldn't handle your stuff when you were drinking in college, or you have a drinking problem now. Like, when we start assigning like blame, you know, we're talking about a significant like trust breakdown. And honestly, it's like a fear reaction. It's like, this is scary to think of things being outside of my control. So if I just think of like person A who has a drinking problem or a peanut problem, that was avoidable. So I don't have to deal with the fact there are things outside my control. You know what I mean? So that's like where that comes from. And so then it starts getting super murky. It's like, hey, just please don't bring peanuts, or can we not drink at Christmas dinner? And it's like, that should be pretty simple, but we're bringing in like really like existential fears here. For human beings, like, wait, there's stuff outside my control, because you could always pull it back. I had a dad who had cancer, right? And he had chemo on and off for 10, 11 years. Could have been like, yeah, well, he smoked cigarettes when he was younger. He was a firefighter. So he was around a lot of like, you know, stuff that was burning that probably like could have like exposed him to possibly like getting cancer. Those are the choices he made. That's on him. You know, I don't care. I'm coming to Christmas dinner, even though I have the flu. I don't care if he's on chemo. Those are his choices. Right. And it's like, that's just because me as a person, if I'm making that kind of decision, thinking about it from myself, I want to believe that everything is a choice. And I don't think it always is. There's just some things that are outside of our control. We don't intend for things to happen. And can we be compassionate when people find themselves in situations in which they need a little care and empathy, you know? So it is like it's an easy place to go to resentment and anger when you think about people not doing that, especially if it's like a loved one that you have.
That's a really good point with the cancer and like the choices around that. But that we don't hold that person to the same standard as, and I'm saying collective, some people, many people totally get this and have no problem with it, but there just are always going to be some people who don't and struggle with it. I think that's just the nature of the beast.
I remember it's all friends like this, you know, it was, you're in college and like everybody like cracks open that first beer. And little do you know, for some of those guys, their path was going to go down like a lot of like pain and darkness. And eventually, thankfully for some of them, like into sobriety, because it just wasn't, you know, it just didn't work for them. It didn't work with them, with what they had going on. That doesn't make them a bad person to while have like, you know, feelings about things they perhaps did while drinking. But they didn't know. I didn't know. We all cracked open the first beer at the same time. You know what I mean? So it was just like a luck of the draw, if you will, on some level when it comes to that, you know?
Especially when there's a genetic component and like a environment component of like you have anxiety and depression. So like when you crack that beer, that hits a different spot in your brain that kind of quells that anxiety, depression than it does a person who doesn't have that. that it's
Mhm.
not going to work as a solution for anything, which I feel like only ups your chances of using it as a solution for things.
Yeah. And I know I'm jumping around here too. I think it's like a really great topic. It makes me also think about like the resentment side of it. Like, am I resentful that I can't bring a beer to this like cookout or to this thing because such and such is there? And, you know, they asked me or their mom asked me, like, don't bring a beer. If I'm like resentful and upset about that, that's a moment for me to like ask, why is this so important to me?
I
Like,
mean,
go ahead, David.
I was just going to say, I mean, I personally, in situations like that, I feel like I am the minority in my family dynamics or my friend groups. Even my wife drinks, her friends drink. And even when, you know, they would be too embarrassed to ask me, her friends, but before a dinner, they'd ask my wife, they'd be like, hey, is it okay if like me and my husband get a bottle of wine at dinner? Like, is that going to be okay with David? And I want to lean over the table and be like, hey guys, I wouldn't have come here to dinner tonight if I didn't think that was going to be an option. Like, and I think this, you both said it boils down to like what's in our control and accepting what's in and out of our control and how other people are going to act. So like, I've got to be willing to bow out of any activity like that if I get uncomfortable or if it's not a place that I want to be. And then they have to accept that, you know, that
Mhm.
might hurt people's feelings. That's the other side of it. But I think that's just the reality of this.
Yeah. But I think too, like if you're going to that dinner or that whatever trip, you have to ask yourself like, why am I going?
Mhm.
And so like here's a good example. Like the three of us went to Vegas a couple years ago, and we had two other buddies that went with it too. Out of all of us, like the only person that was not sober was me. And so we had like a great time in Vegas and everything. But I like going in that trip, I'm like, I'm not going to drink because like I'm going with four sober bros. Like we're having a good time. The point of the trip is to not go to Vegas and get hammered or even like to catch a buzz. Like we're going to go to casinos. We're going to go to like a UFC fight. We're going to go to see the Hoover Dam, which was amazing. I will say for our one listener out there, if you've not been to the Hoover Dam, you should go. Incredible. Like, why am I here? You know what I mean? Like kind of pulling back, like what is the point of this? And I was like, yeah, totally. Like, it's fine. Like, this is good. Like, I had a great time. Didn't need it. And so there is like a little bit of a personal challenge there, like, especially in adulthood, that we can get so married to like, we have to have that beer or wine to have a good time, even if we wouldn't say we have a problem, that we need to really like check that. And like, is that why we're going to this get together, this trip, whatever? Like, is that the point of it? And can we have a good time without it? And I can say from firsthand experience, you can't. Have a really good time, you know?
Yeah. I keep thinking about, you know, I feel very lucky in a sense that when I got sober, it was pretty early that I felt comfortable being around people drinking, smoking weed, even like music was important to me, much more important earlier on in my sobriety. Like it was important for me to continue to go to concerts and go shoot pool with the guys at the bar and stuff like that. But some people, that's not the case. I mean, and who's to say how long someone needs to be okay with something if they're ever okay with it? So it's easy for me to sit here and say that like, oh, you should be good after a year, but like that's not everyone's experience. And some people might go years without ever feeling comfortable around a bar room or a concert where people are smoking weed all around them. And that's okay too. But I think again, you know, it's just like what you can and can't control. And if you need to bow out of those things, you do it. But you're like the minority.
Yeah. And I know you guys can speak to this too. Like when you think about people we have talked to who have relapse, I can't think of anybody who was like, yeah, my Uncle Frank was like sitting there, just watch Home Alone this weekend, by the way. My Uncle Frank was sitting there drinking like, you know, a gin and tonic, and I just had to have it. That's where my relapse started. It typically goes way, way back before that. And there's usually like a chronic, like fighting it. And like it said earlier, like, hey, you guys know what you're stepping into. That's the other thing that's hard at the family member to realize. Like, my family member, even though I've like seen them as incompetent, and like really struggling, they're pretty competent. They have figured out how to get their hands on like alcohol. They figure out how to get their hands on weed, crack, heroin, you name it, based on like who the person we're talking about. They're really competent. And I like to believe they're not, right? Because like they've kind of tricked me, but they're really like, they know what they're going into. Like to your point, David, like they know like what they're stepping into. Like, it's like, okay, I'm aware like this is like the Christmas dinner and stuff. And if people are being like really weird about it, that's going to make me feel insecure on some level too. So it just needs to be discussed on some level,
Yeah. And, Lucas, you made a comment of like, you said, oh, you should have the tools. And at what point does that happen? If in someone's sobriety journey, if they should have the tools to like make it through an event like that.
It's different for different people, and there's no like set amount of time. I feel in general that, hey, around 9 months, a year, beyond that, you're sober and you're working some kind of program, you should probably have tools to be prepared to be around alcohol and how to deal with that in your life. Because I mean, my thing is, I don't think you get to 9 months, a year, or a year and a half unless you're a bubble boy and live in a bubble in your apartment and don't ever come out if you have issues with alcohol. Because you're going to see that at gas stations, at grocery stores where you buy food, at restaurants, at bars, at family gatherings, with any friends. I feel like it's so around everywhere. TV commercials, I mean, internet commercials, you name it. Alcohol is everywhere. So I think if you've gotten to the point of 9 months sober, a year sober, year and a half sober, you probably have some tools at that point to be able to deal with that. And if you don't, and you get really scared and you're at one of these things, I hope that serves as a wake-up call. If you're back home and you're like, man, I really need to get to a meeting, but I don't know where any are. I mean, my thing, and it might sound kind of harsh, but it's like, why don't you know any meetings where your parents live if you go visit there 3 or 4 times a year? That'd be a really good thing to have 3 or 4 meetings, 3 or 4 different times of the day that you don't even got to think about it. Just pack up your stuff, head out the door and go hit them. Or your sponsor's phone number, or some kind of mentor's phone number, or a peer in recovery's phone number, something. Yeah. So I just think that's not stuff that just falls in your lap. You got to work to have those tools. And whether you do that in 2 months, 9 months, 5 years, I don't know. But I'd say the sooner the better.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And I think I've said in another podcast earlier that my rule of thumb is a year, just like to family members, like just don't have anything around for the first year. After that, ask and just check the comfort level.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because I think that core element of that is like you're never ready to do it by yourself.
Yeah,
like once you realize that, like that's when you're probably like, if you realize I'm not equipped to do this by myself, because my own self, just me, like look where it's gotten me. So I probably need to like talk to a friend before I do this. I need to talk to a therapist afterwards. I need to go talk to my sponsor beforehand. You tell my mom I'm a little worried about this, or this is just something I'm aware of, just to talk it out. So it's not this unspoken thing. Like, I think that is like probably the foundational thing there. It's like when you realize you can't do it on your own, you're much more equipped to handle the situations as they come up.
Totally agree.
Yeah. One other thing I want to jump back to is just like the anger and resentment with that family member. So let's go back to the initial question, and how do you deal with those frustrations? And this question was coming from a mom who has a son dealing with alcoholism, whatever, substance use disorder. And she's mad with or getting frustrated with another family member, an uncle, whatever, aunt, uncle, who knows. But it would also be very important for me to go and talk to that family member and just be honest and admit like what's in my control and what's not, and to say like, hey, I just need to get this off of my chest. I know that this is out of my control. I know that this is like a thing going on in my family, your extended family. But it really hurt my feelings when this happened. And you weren't willing, to leave alcohol at home because, and this is why, A, B, and C. I would just need to get that off of my chest and say, and just lead with, try not to play the blame game too much, and lead with honesty of, it's important. Family is important to me, and I want my son to experience that. I want him to be around family. And it just hurts me that maybe that can't happen as much now because he's struggling with something that you're not willing to like put down in order to hang out, you know.
Mm.
Just like you were saying about Las Vegas, like you were going to Las Vegas with a bunch of sober guys and you were like, hey, this isn't a drinking trip. This is me hanging out with guys. And we're just here to hang out, have a good time.
Guys, this isn't a drinking trip. It's a gambling trip.
Yeah.
No drinking, only gambling. Where's the Oyo at, dude? Get to the Oyo.
No, I think that I think also when you have that conversation, like you were saying, David, it might point to different issues. Like it may be because they say, I just don't see why I can't bring it and he can't control it. And that might be an education issue. It may be, I think he's just making stuff up and acting like, you know, people can't drink around him, but it's really not even that big a deal. That sounds like a trust issue as far as the relationship goes, like trust and control. So I think it could point to different directions for like kind of how you attack that, not attack, but just how you respond to it. That some people just don't know, you know, it a lot of times it really is an education issue. And I think you can reach people if you come, you know, politely and positively with that education of just like, hey, you just might not know this. This is what it is. And they might leave with a totally different frame of mind, not only for that situation, but situations in the future and more empathy for people in recovery in the future. And then if it's a trust issue, I think that's something that can be fixed within families too, you know, of like, I just think you're trying to make a big deal out of this and just to control me. I mean, that probably gets to other stuff as well. And then the last one, I think, is that, and I'm not saying this for all people, but I think sometimes it highlights a problem within themselves that like, hey, if you can't not drink for, you know, the 3 hours on Christmas, maybe you have a problem. And like, I hate to be the one to say that. I really never do say it, but you know, it's like that kind of does highlight something of like, if you can't go 3 hours without a drink, what does that say about you and your relationship with alcohol? And again, I'm not trying to be the one to point fingers at that, but that's kind of the third option is like, you might have an issue if even supporting a loved one isn't enough and it's not a trust issue and it's not a, an education issue. You get all that and you're like, I just can't not drink for 3 hours, but that person's probably going to blame it on the first two before they're going to say, hey, I really wish I could. I just can't. I cannot drink for this 3 hour function. And that's a pretty vulnerable thing to put out there, especially if you want it to be someone else's fault and not your own.
Yeah, I'm thinking about it like in a chart form where there's like assumed or implied slights, right? You're like you maybe you're going ahead and assuming that granddad's not going to care or whatever, he's going to be drinking or whatever, like, and it hasn't actually even happened yet. We don't know. It hasn't been this explicit slight of like, hey, the person just needs just family member of yours. They just need to like be able to be around alcohol. That's not my problem. So I think you first have to like ask yourself, is this actually, am I assuming this out of like my own like fears and insecurities as the family member of this person with the substance abuse problem? So ask yourself that. And then if it does seem to be something that you're just worried about, then you go, I think, the education route and just try to shine some light on what's going on. And say like, hey, this is just where I'm coming from. This is what I'm like a little worried about with such and such coming for the holidays. Like, do you mind if we like take it? It's more of like an education, fact-finding mission. If you do the fact-finding mission, and then it turns out the person is explicitly like very negative towards your family member about like, I'm gonna still bring my like gin and tonics, whatever. Like, I don't care what he did. He's the one who created this. He's the one who's an alcoholic, not me, not my problem. Then I think you go a little bit different route. Like once you have those facts and it's more of a request of like, hey, I ask you please not do that. And then boundaries. So it's just like, and the boundaries can look at different ways. I mean, like you just don't go to said function, or going into it, you and your family member have like a game plan. Like that's no different from like me with my like 6-year-old going into like a bigger family function. And I know there's a better chance that there's going to be eggs and peanuts there. Hey, make sure we have the EpiPen. Hey, if you get a treat, like come grab me first, special dessert, let me know. Like just having a plan going into it, because there's not as much like communication and trust in that situation if we're going to go. Right. And then if it turns out, and they go to the last point, like the third one, if they're like, no, I still need to drink at this thing. I'm going to bring my alcohol. I don't care what your family member is going on. Then maybe it's like, well, I'm a little worried about your own drinking, if that's the point, if you have the rapport to say it. And that's like probably a pretty brutal place. But I think of it as tears, and to realize like you're coming into it from like a fairly vulnerable situation. And when we have vulnerability, we will put people in like boxes of like, ally or enemy. Like we do that. We're constantly looking for danger. Are they aligned with me, or are they an enemy? And we do that subconsciously. So being very aware of that, realize like, hey, I'm feeling vulnerable. Is this actually grounded in fact yet? So, and then do your fact finding mission. That makes sense.
Yeah. I thought that was a really good way of structuring it. It makes me think about in video games, they have what they call dialogue trees.
Yeah.
Where it's like, all right, if they say this, then you have these 3 options of how to respond. And then when you say that, and like dialogue trees can get pretty complicated. Mm-hmm. And I think if I wrote one out for this situation, you did a really good job of simplifying it. But I think if I tried to, it would seem really complicated. I know that like the more you play around in those dialogue trees of like all the different options and stuff, the less you really even have to think about it. And you just kind of know if A, then B, if B, then C. But I would have trouble thinking of every single option, of every single twist and turn it could take, because there's just a lot of them in these situations. What's also kind of funny to me is that, again, I think you did a really good job explaining that. And it was like very much like the intellectual side of it. I think like the shorthand wisdom, like recovery side of it is just the Serenity Prayer, which kind of encompasses everything you just said of like, there's stuff that I can change that I'm going to do. I'm going to have a plan. I'm going to have a backup. I know I can't control other people. I can put down boundaries, but I'm still giving them the option of like, not giving them the option. I've told them not to show up with alcohol. So if they do, am I going to tell them they're not welcome, or am I going to let them in and just deal with it? And then what are my pivots? So I think just focusing on what I can control, no matter what happens, always leaves me in like a more healthy and peaceful state, versus when I'm trying to kind of control other people and / fearful of what if I can't control them and they do stuff I can't control. I think that goes way more like negative and has me just fearful and on edge.
100%. Yeah, and it's nice to sit down and like conceptualize in this like intellectual way. And I realize like it's not always that easy. You know, you're gonna have to realize there's probably like emotions coming up and your own like distrust with that family member or friend who you don't think is going to respect your child or the person that you love's substance issues. That probably come from like old stuff, you know, of there was this time on vacation they didn't do this, and you know what I mean, like, and trying to keep it more rooted on this issue today.
Yeah. Another thing that made me think of, kind of separate tangent, is just the difference between someone drinking and being drunk. And I was thinking about it, like I couldn't tell you the last time that I was around a drunk person that I can think of. And that I feel like I somehow have a lot more control over than just being around someone drinking. I think there's a certain amount of people just drinking in the world that I kind of do have to accept to be a part of the world. Gas stations, grocery stores, restaurants, family events, friend events, functions, parties, all that kind of stuff. But when it goes over that line to where people are just like hammered, you know, and just like all over the place, I've just really not been around that in a long time that I can think of. So it seems like that's something I do have a lot more control over, because that there's some line there that, yeah, it doesn't get crossed as often at a fine dining restaurant. There's going to be people with glasses of wine, but rarely, and I can't think of any for myself, where there's been an instance where some guy at a table next to me is just like hammered, reeking of alcohol. You can see it on his face, see it in his eyes, super triggering. For some reason, leaning over to my table, being like, "Come on, dude, just have a glass of wine with me." You know, like the fear can kind of take me there, but that doesn't really happen in my experience.
Well, I think it's more like for the family situations, it's like that cousin that you maybe always like go out back and like,
no, you go for a walk, dude.
You go for a walk, you know,
the cousin
like,
walk.
Yeah, the cousin walk. You got a flask or whatever, or you're gonna go like smoke a little bit on the break and everything. Like, if you know that your family member does that, like they go hang out with cousin Jimmy or whatever, you know this. Talk to your family member about it. Like, hey, like historically, like just call it what it is. Like historically at Thanksgiving, you go for a walk with cousin Jimmy and you like come back smelling like weed, or I've seen you get really trashed doing this. Like, what is your plan for this year? And if your family member's like, I have no plan, I'm planning to go on a walk with cousin Jimmy, then there's probably a good clue where your family member's at, or if hopefully they have like a plan or like, I'm not going to do that. But if they're fearful about specific situations, speak directly to it,
Mhm. Yeah, I think the more direct, the better. We definitely had the cousin walks in my family, and I was
Did
a
you?
big part of that. Yeah, so whenever I see those memes that are like when you and your cousin go for a walk, and then you come back looking like this,
Look at
but I always send those to them still to this day because they get it. I think a lot of families do. That's why those memes exist.
How about you,
Um,
David? Did y'all have cousin walks?
Oh yeah.
Wow,
Yeah.
dang.
I've been
Okay.
cousin walks. And
Dave was looking real relaxed.
yeah, I've also had I feel like I get myself in the position a lot more than Lucas of being around the guy that's hammered.
Yeah, you do.
And I don't know why that is. I
You
think I
attract them. We do know why. It's one, you're David McNeese, and you attract like really funny interactions. Lucas and I would agree on this. Like one of our favorite things to see is to watch David talking to a complete stranger and just the interactions they get into and how hilarious it is unintentionally. But the other part of it is that you go out, but you
yeah.
go to your plays, you like your brunches, you like your dinners, like you do that a bit more than Lucas does. So that's probably why you're around it a bit more than he is.
And my wife worked in events. So like the last thing I
Yes. So
can
then
think
she does
of-
the events.
yeah, the last thing I can think of that like really had my blood boiling was we were at an event, a Christmas party that she put on. It was all centered around alcohol and it was getting later, people were starting to get pretty tipsy, and I go to the bathroom and I'm at the urinal and a dude comes up next to me, urinal next to me, sloshed, like wobbling into the urinal, goes ahead and throws his head on the wall while he's peeing. He's like propped up. Well, he misses the urinal and it pees like splashing on my shoe. And I finish up and I know it's not worth it. Like I know just not to say anything to him directly. I don't want to cause any conflict. I just leave the bathroom. I go find my wife and I'm like, I'm done. I'm done. I'm leaving. I don't care if I have to call you an Uber home or if I have to Uber home and you take my car, but you got to know your limits. This goes back to like know where you're comfortable.
How feverishly did you clean your shoes, David?
I think I threw them away. I think I threw them away, dude.
That sounds right.
Yeah.
That does sound right.
They're too far gone.
Yeah,
Get rid of them.
bro. If I go to New York City and I'm going around the city for 3 or 4 days, I just throw those shoes away.
No, you do not. Do you really, David?
They're like black by the time they come home.
I think a difference too, and some of this I think is just like being intentional. Like David, I don't think it bothers you possibly to the same extent that it does me, but I think some of it's like how you set up your life. And I mean, my wife is in recovery. My wife's job was working in recovery. So even if I went to like a work event for her, her life, it was all like recovery focused and mostly people in recovery. Like 95% of my friends are in recovery. So if I'm ever like going out, going to dinner, whatever, like when you were saying that about friends asking if they could drink or anything, like I was thinking I couldn't think of the last time that had happened for me, if at all. I think just the more recovery people you have around you, the less likely that's even going to be a thing that comes up. And then family will be kind of that last issue that there's only, your family is your family. There's not much choice there besides whether to be around them or not. And I don't think that's a good thing or a bad thing. I think it's just like a toleration, like how much of that can you be around? And if it really doesn't bother you, then have friends that drink and like to drink with dinner. And if that's all good, then it's all good. And if it's not, then probably have more friends in recovery that kind of line up with your values, at least on that one thing there. And then you probably won't have people drinking at dinner. So I think some of it's just like, what can you withstand, and then set up your life kind of around that accordingly.
Yeah. One other thing I think of is I want to go take you boys back on a memory lane journey to my dating days. And way before my wife, and I'm on dating apps.
Morgan, earmuffs.
Yeah, I can remember just having so much fear around being on dating apps. Girls, it was popular to like meet at a bar or go for a drink first for the first interaction. And I was getting asked that a lot of like, oh, well, we should just meet up for a drink. And I'm like, well, what do I say? Like so much fear wrapped in that. And eventually I got to this place where I just put it on my profile of like, I'm sober. I don't drink. And it ultimately it came down to this place of self-worth and pride that I'd built up of this is just who I am. And if you can't accept me for that, then like, that's fine. And I'm okay with you not being a part of my life. And I think ultimately that kind of goes into family too, of like, hey, this is just who I am and I'm proud of who I am. And like, if you're not okay with that person and you need to go a separate path, it's better that it's that way, like I will welcome open arms, but like, it's just who I am. And I even feel that way, like going out with my wife. A lot of times her friends will be like, David seems like he's the one that's drank more than anybody here. He's up dancing on the stage, singing karaoke, and he's sober.
Yeah.
And it's just part of like, having a sense of pride and self-worth and being okay with, what you have going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Realizing that you don't need that to like just be who you are.
Yeah. And all of the guys have to get to that point. Like we're trying to get them all to that point of like, hey, this is just who you are and it's okay. And I just thought of this. I want to read it really quick. I sent this to my wife last night. And I think it kind of ties in. Maybe not. But it says the goal isn't just to be sober. It's to build a life you don't need to escape from.
Dude, I think that does apply. And I think it applies for both, not only obviously the person struggling with the substance abuse, but also the person who's caring for that person. You know what I mean? Like imagine going into a family function and that you checked your own resentments at the door, that you have like said things you need to say to people you can trust, you fucking have that conversation with, or you have so you changed, or you've like decided just not to go because the safety's not there, or you've accepted like this is the situation for what it is. Like that is a piece that you could walk into a family function with, you know what I mean? And like a life that is like, okay, I feel good about this life I've created. So it's not just for the person who's sober, it's for their family members too.
Yeah. I mean, that's the ultimate goal. I mean, when you get to that point, whether a family member is drinking at the party or not, that's irrelevant.
Yeah.
Like you're so comfortable in who you are.
Yeah. And I think it takes both. It takes both acceptance and change. That means like you maybe don't go on that cousin walk. Maybe you do have a tough conversation with a grandma before the Christmas get together or whatever, and then maybe you just like have to accept like, hey, my family's kind of wild. Like I'm going to go, but I'm gonna have a car to escape. I'm probably going to stay about 45 minutes, or we're just not going to do that this year. We're doing a new tradition. Like that's okay too.
I think that's a point that almost everybody hits in their recovery too, where you have this like trust and reliance in the tool set we were talking about earlier, that really anything could happen and I'm going to be all right. Like I have enough trust and reliance in the tools that I have, the ability to pivot, the accountability around me, the support I have around me, all this stuff that I've proactively created, that life could throw anything at me. And I'm not saying it's going to be easy. I'm not saying I'm going to do it gracefully, but that I'm going to be all right on the other side of it. I think that's like a big point that someone can hit in recovery, where they know that. And it's no longer those things of like, well, unless this thing happened and then I wouldn't know what to do and I'd probably crumble and fall apart. But to know that like, no, that would be really, really, really hard. And there's a lot of parts of that I can't imagine how hard that's going to be. But I'm going to do the same stuff I've been doing. I'm going to lean on these things and I'm going to get through it. And I'm going to get through sober.
Yep. Yes, sir. Check the question one more time, Dave. Did we address it? Did we answer it?
Yeah, I think so. Let me find it. Yeah. How can you manage frustration or anger toward family members who don't show the same support for someone in recovery as they would for someone with another condition, like the peanut allergy?
I think we gave a classic, very long-winded answer to that question.
Oh, yeah.
I think so, with like 15 tangent answers to questions that nobody asked.
Yeah, we
Side question for that one. David, when you go to New York City, what kind of shoes do you wear and what do you do with those shoes when you come back?
Yeah.
I just want to know that too. If you could answer that as well. Thank you.
this
We're
is
big,
what happens.
we're big side quest guys. You
We
know?
are. We're just
We should, that should be our new, if we get clean breakthrough, we're the side quest boys, you know?
I like it.
Anyone in the chat, please please ask a question for next time so we can not answer it and then answer 15 questions you didn't ask for. Go ahead and drop that question in the chat so we can not answer it.
Oh, how would you, okay,
It's
let's see.
just our hook, dude. You got to stick around.
Yeah,
maybe
yeah.
5 podcast episodes later.
How about this?
I'm
I'm going to challenge, let's challenge each of us on this. Let's see. Okay. To that question,
Don't challenge me. I'm not changing.
can you answer it in one sentence? Can you answer one sentence to that specific question?
Can it be a run-on sentence?
Depending on how many, you can only have 3 commas.
How many commas, colons, and semicolons can I cram into this sentence?
Can you answer in one sentence? I see. How to manage anger and resentment. Let me see. I'm gonna try. Let me see.
one word.
One word, bro. And then we're gonna do, it's be something like serenity or something, you know,
I would say honesty.
or wisdom. I would say wisdom.
See, I would say honesty. You say wisdom.
Wisdom to
I
know the
would've-
difference.
I would have said Serenity Prayer if it was just one sentence, the
That's
simplest as possible.
Yeah.
I say if you there's not a situation I can think of that if you don't filter it through the intention of that prayer, you can't figure out the answer.
Yeah, I totally agree. Because I was gonna say, like, just figuring out what you can change and what you can accept with this and run it through the is this an assumed slight? And do some fact finding on that. And now I'm starting to just like throw it. I'm just not even saying a sentence. I'm just throwing words together.
You're not following your own rules, dude.
Like, if I put a pause in, that's not the end of the sentence. I'm like, and then fact finding, you know, that needs to happen. What is he saying there? What is he just?
This guy's not saying a sentence. He's just going on and on and on.
He's just saying words. All
No,
right,
one last quote that I heard that I think kind of applies to this. That applies to a lot of stuff in life. I heard this yesterday. Someone said, "If you're not if you're not at the table, you're on the menu." You know, like it did.
Look at David's face.
I can't see David's face.
You can't. It's worth looking at.
I can't
He's
see it.
blinked 17 times since you started.
Does he not know what it means, or is he laughing really hard?
I think he's confused, as am I. We're like,
Yeah.
If you're not at the table, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. I think being at the table is like talking to people directly and sitting up for like whatever it is that's going on. But I think like if you're not gonna do that, then like yeah, you're kind of on the menu to just be around drunk people doing whatever they want to do and to be super uncomfortable and like not have any. I don't get it, dude. I don't even know why I come here or why I talk.
I really wish you could have seen David's face during all that. It was so good.
It's
Did you get
ridiculous.
that from Andy Elliott?
I get no respect. No, it's some lawmaker in Texas, dude. You wouldn't get it. You don't know about politics.
Oh God. Oh Lord.
If you're not on
Wow.
the table, you're an ingredient.
You're on
Oh
the
my
menu.
God.
I just said like
No,
eat
it
or
was
be
good.
eaten or something.
It was
Right?
good. I like it.
Eat or be eaten. Yeah, I guess. All right.
No, it means be involved.
Be involved.
That's the action part of it. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I can't change, the courage to change the things I can. A lot of times I think about the acceptance, but I don't think
forget
about
the wisdom to know the difference. We
no,
left that part out.
but the courage to do the hard thing, to have the tough conversation I really don't want to have, that it's easier to talk around and it's easier to talk to with the other family member about that one family member. But the one thing I don't want to do is to sit down with that family member and have a direct yet polite and like conversation where I phrase things the best way I can and do that hard thing. A lot of times there's a hard thing that I do need to do and it's not just acceptance.
yeah.
And I just don't want to do it. especially if I've never done something like that before. But the more I do hard things like that, the easier it is to do it the next time.
Yeah. Perhaps it's something along the lines of don't pretend this isn't something that it is, and know what it is. What? That's what I'm saying. Like, don't talk around it. Like, just speak directly to it. But also know if your own fears are clouding your judgment. So do the work on that too.
Yes. All right. Well, that's the last time I give anything for this podcast, and this will be my last time here. So, thanks to the one fan.
Well, welcome to the club, Lucas. I
never
always
coming back because of the disrespect of David making faces at me that I couldn't even see.
His face wasn't even a face. It was this right here. He was doing this. This was the face.
Oh gosh.
He was trying. Why
so
it's funny? Because he was trying so hard. He
Yeah.
was trying so hard to understand it, and he was just in like a stuck smile, and you could see the wheel turning, and he's like, "Wait, what is he saying about menus and being eaten and who table?"
It's a metaphor, dude. God, y'all wouldn't get it.
Oh, it's so good. It was
All right,
really
we're
good.
gonna wrap it there.
Okay. Sounds good. Love that
All right.
question.
All right.